Hello, and welcome to the ChristiTutionalist Politics show. Over time, the fancy high production items will come. But for now, for starters, it's just you as a listener that I can barely begin to express how much I appreciate from the bottom of my heart you being here, as I know you have a lot of options. As Listen Notes, the podcast platform says, there are about 168.9 million plus podcasts you could choose from. And I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me, as indeed it is just me on the podcast outside, at least for the initial episodes. All substance, no muss, no fuss, no fluff, no fancy or flashy high production inserts or intro, just straight to the key discussion points. A show that will look at a variety of topics, mostly politics, through a Christian United States constitutionalist lens. Hence, obviously, the ChristiTutionalist Politics title. I am your host, Joseph M. Leonard, and last name is spelled L-E-N-A-R-D, like most pronounce Leonard, but without the O, an author of a very non-traditional but Christian, nonetheless Christian book, co-host of Savaged Unfiltered podcast, and for purposes of this show, most notably a blogger for thelibertybeacon.com, from which most of the content for the show will be derived. These are not going to be long, drawn-out episodes. I just want something short for you to be able to tune into, get the highlights, food for thought. You can then delve deeper into via my online articles and reach your own conclusion. And as Graham Norton would say on his late night talk show, let's get on with the show. Hello, everybody. Some housekeeping notes first, and then we're going to jump right into a discussion with J.J.Carrell. Those of you who are regulars to the show, thank you. Know that generally if I have a guest, it's in second or third segment, but after a few seconds, we're going to dive right in with J.J.Carrell and have a discussion about immigration and wherever else it goes. But first, some housekeeping notes. I guess the show could be called BASSAKWARDS, because like I say, normally a guest comes on later. We're going to do that up front this time. And I say that just so any newbies surfing in, hello, thank you, welcome for joining. Hope you'll become regulars. As time goes on, and I apologize in advance. Our weather's been weird. I've got a splitting headache, so I'm not with it as my wit is not about me as much as it normally would be. And those of you who are tuning in new haven't heard me say, I usually use notes, and because of that headache, I'm definitely going to need them today. And my notes are hastily scribbled for this segment on the back of my Denzel Washington Equalizer 3 movie ticket I saw the other day, because we're recording this, pre-recording beginning of September. Also, those of you watching on the behind-the-scenes sneak peek YouTube, JLenardDetroit, YouTube and Rumble behind-the-scenes video sneak peek channel video. Oh, God, did that come out shitty. But anyway, like I said, this is raw and uncut, not scripted. I do use notes, as you can see. I also have my, if you're looking on YouTube or Rumble, see my They Live movie ticket. Hopefully you saw that. If not, try to catch They Live on streaming. 35th anniversary, as discussed previously on ChristiTutionalist Politics show. Early John Carpenter film, 35 years ago, as I said. very political, subconsciously. Aliens are a metaphorical stand-in for governmental deep state agents. So it's a great film. I highly recommend it. But and yeah, you may see my 9/11 commemorative shirt. Again, we're recording this early September for later broadcast. At any rate, let's not delay it any further, because again, with my headache, I'm just likely to babble. Let's welcome J.J.Carrell. And yes, it is J.J.Carrell, not Carrell. I confirmed that with him ahead because my last name looks French. It's Leonard, Joseph M. Leonard, without an O. It's not Leonard, so I'm sensitive to the name. So welcome to the show, J.J.Carrell. Tell us about yourself.
Well, first, thanks for having me on and speak about something that I find is extremely impactful, and I believe it is the #1 threat to the republic of our country, and it's that is the unfettered millions of illegal aliens pouring into our nation. So thank you for allowing me to come speak to you today.
Oh, I'm glad you joined us. Well, as you know, as new people to the show may not know, I am the author of Terror Strikes Coming Soon to a City Near You. And I discuss immigration. I don't go in depth. I didn't want a huge, like, War and Peace type length book.
Right.
It would be too expensive. People can't afford it in this high inflation time. But I touch on it. And just the other day, there was a report, I forget, it may have been Breitbart, about 75,000 potential threats due to the open border. Now, there are hundreds of folks on terror watch lists we've interceded. How many thousands are indeed in the non-interdicted gotaways? And let alone the 75,000 middle-aged or military-aged is the term I'm looking for. Again, apologize, a headache. Military-aged males from suspicious places flooding across our border. Your thoughts?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. You're correct. That article just came out this past week, and it's 75,000 special interest aliens. And in my job, I've only been retired for 2 years. I spent 24 years in the United States Border Patrol. So I come to this with a very unique perspective as a guy that worked the front lines, down the trenches, got my supervisor bars, and then I rose up to senior leadership within San Diego sector. So I have a 30,000-foot view and a very down the weeds.
I think my mumbling and fumbling is worn off on you. You have. I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. The SIAs, we call them special interest aliens. We call them SIAs. And there's been 75,000 that have been arrested in FY 2023. We're not through FY 2023. We have one more month of reporting. So that 75 is going to be closer to anywhere from 82 to 90,000. So why is that important? Well, because special interest aliens are aliens that have connections to terrorist organizations, and they're being allowed into our country. And let me give you some context, your audience, some context of what 75,000 is and how outrageous this is. In FY 2022, which is last year, we only had 25,000 special interest aliens.
And that's
shocking.
That's high.
That's high. That's shocking. If you go to 2020, you go down to 2020, we're now at 3,600. And if you go back into my career, you're down in the teens, because this is when I was second in charge of a border patrol station. So if we got a special interest alien into our custody, it was huge. I mean, it was a major situation and event. And I would start the paperwork and send emails all the way up to Washington, D.C., to DHS headquarters, all the way back down. Joint Terrorism Task Force, JTTF agents would come into my station and interview this person thoroughly. And then that individual would be deported back into their homeland, the country of origin. Now, that's in the teens, like maybe special interest aliens in my 24-year career. I want to say, just on top of my head, maybe I encountered 15 of them, 15 in 24 years. And I arrested thousands directly and indirectly throughout my career. I'm telling you, 15. Now we're at 75,000. And here's where it even gets in more unbelievable. Once we determine that they're special interest aliens, do we send them back to their home country? No. Biden and Mayorkas released them into America. You have, I wrote an article about this and I wrote it in my book, Invaded. You have a standing army of thousands of terrorists in the United States of America just in the last 3 years under Joe Biden, because the borders are completely wide open.
Yeah, and let me say this. Again, terror strikes coming soon to a city near you. I make my character say plain what I believe. Now, terror strikes coming soon to a city near you is historical fiction, or as I call it, faction. At the end of the day, we're still dealing mostly with fictional characters engaging in artificial stances. Not everything in the book is what I believe, and not everything I believe is in the book, right? Yeah,
right.
That usual disclaimer. If you're looking for a book to agree with everything, that's not it. Because in fact, on my terrorstrikes.info website, at the bottom of the page, it says, many deem my book controversial and upsetting. It's meant to be. It's meant to make people think, to challenge one's own and others' intentions, motives, own morality, and mortality. So I mean to upset everybody. I want you thinking, but immigration, no one I know is against legal immigration. We may need to have the discussion whether there should be a pause for a while so those here can assimilate, which is not unprecedented. We've done it before.
Yes,
but
we did.
We may need to do that because so many have flooded in. All right. Some of my best friends, the most patriotic United States citizens I know, are legal immigrants that came from communist hellholes to escape there what they're now seeing and having to fight here now. So it's not about all immigrants. It's about those who break in our back door. Their first act is to break our laws. But you want us to trust them to not break other laws? Your thoughts?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because the majority of all my podcasts that I have been on to promote my book and national television shows, I do make that point right off the bat. We're talking about illegal immigration, because the left and people that want open borders conflate it to make you sound like you're anti-immigrant. This is not anti-immigrant. This is
racist.
Rule of law.
Right.
Or racist.
Racist.
I've been called, yeah, I've been called that my entire career, right? Being a big white guy, working the border, and people don't understand that we don't see color. I don't see color. But if you want to get into the demographics of the Border Patrol, I'm the minority in the Border Patrol. 60% of the Border Patrol is Hispanic, Mexican nationals, or Latin American.
They're all self-loathing, white supremacists.
Yeah.
Don't
I know.
you know, right?
We live in an upside down world. But when you look at, and you touched on this just briefly, is when you look at the totality of what's going on the border. Let me just give you some hard data, because I'm very big on just telling you exactly what's happening. It's not what I believe, or it's from 24 years of experience and a guy that knows what the data means and how it's being presented. Right now, as we speak, Joe Biden's been in office less than 3 years, about 32 months. In 32 months, he has arrested and released a majority of 7 million people. In 2023, in the fiscal year, which ends in September, he will have eclipsed arresting over a record-breaking 3 million individuals in 1 year and releasing almost all of them.
Yeah.
We are still averaging between 8,500 and 10,000 arrests a day, which equates to about 256 to 275,000 individuals that are being arrested and encountered and released every single month. Now, you touched on this as well, and I believe your audience has to understand this, that when you talk about arrests and encounters. We're not talking about the millions of individuals that cross the border undetected and then abscond, because as you and I speak right now, there are hundreds of miles of the southern border that are completely unmanned. I'm gonna give you an example. Okay, I'll give you an example. In Tucson sector this past week, they had a surge of illegal aliens where they caught like 22 to 2,500 in one day, and it shut all law enforcement operations down. So Tucson sector, which is enormous size sector, pulled all of their Border Patrol agents from the field. So there's nobody guarding the Tucson sector border. Does anybody understand how vulnerable and dangerous this is to America? And when you look at the insanity of it, how it's so irrational, you have to believe that Mayorkas, who I believe is an incredibly intelligent man, and the people that are under him, they know this. This is not bad policy. This is intentional destruction of our American immigration system. I believe in that completely.
Flowered and Piven. Now you triggered a few things. Oh yeah, let me do a Marco Rubio too. Grab my Detroit Fury mug. Detroit Fury, back when they were the arena football team, one of two in Detroit. Arena football is supposed to come back. They went bankrupt during COVID, and I created the Detroit Arena Football fan club back then. But yeah, let me pull a Marco Rubio too. Sip my Soda Stream root beer. Hi, Soda Stream, if you're out there. I give you shout outs all the time when I co-host Savage Unfiltered. You should be sponsoring my show. So there's your free plug. Now sponsor the show. But anyway, back to the serious topics. You triggered in a good intellectual way, not a leftist, emotional, hysterical way, thoughts. MLK Jr., content of character. This is not leftist identity politics, black, white, pink, purple, whatever. This is content of character, and their content is they are committing illegal acts, regardless of their color, where they're from, whether it be the northern border or the southern border, though the southern border is the one that is most porous. The other thing is, you mentioned about interdictions and deportations. Biden literally announced that they would be turning back Cubans and Venezuelans, the very people who would actually qualify for our asylum policy, while letting economic violator migrants in by the millions. And the last thing I want to say, for those who are new to the show, and for your benefit, JJ, since you don't know me, ChristiTutionalist Politics. I was born and raised Catholic. Although, as my friend from Wham Radio, Pastor Rick, says, I'm not your normal average Catholic. I've studied all the Christian sects. I've studied Judaism. I've studied Islam, Buddhism, and other religions. It only strengthens my faith, not weakens it. But I'm the guy who coined, as a Catholic, I love John Paul II, of course, but Francis, I coined the hashtag nincompoop, because he's more interested in peddling communism than Catholicism. So I say to nincompoop Francis, okay, when you instruct the walls around the Vatican to be torn down, then you can lecture me on our border wall. Your thoughts on a border wall?
Well, a border wall is essential. And let me explain to you how. First off, my first question when someone debates me on that's a racist, you can't have a border wall. And my first question is, in the apartment or the house that you live in, do you have a front door? And they look at me all confused. And I go, of course you do. So I tell you what, tonight, for 2 nights, not for eternity, I want you to take it off its hinges and go to sleep and see how well you sleep as people pour into your house and steal everything. And that's the same thing.
Right. Not only that, I mean, even during the day, are you just randomly going to say, hey, come on in, help yourself to my refrigerator? No, you
No.
invite people in, you give what you can, you don't let them run roughshod over your property.
Well, here's the thing with the immigration system, and this is where the hypocrisy is at the height of it, right? So people don't realize that we legally bring in 1.2 million legal immigrants a year, okay? If the powers that be, being Biden, Mayorkas, Obama, and even the rhinos like McConnell, McCarthy, Paul Ryan, Romney, et cetera, if they think that number of 1.2 million needs to be increased, then go through the process of creating a bill that goes through Congress and we increase it. And the reason why they won't is the vast majority of Americans not only want the border shut down, but the vast majority of Americans through every poll wants legal immigration either decreased or halted to figure out what the hell is going on in our immigration system. So they won't do that. So how do they, I believe, in my thesis of everything that's happening, is this is the fundamental transformation of America through the destruction of immigration policy, immigration laws. And let me explain why I come to that. And you brought this up about race and ethnicity. The first thing people will say is, well, you're a racist because you don't want Mexican nationals to come in. And I go, okay, hold on. Number one, your ignorance it defines who you are, right? So right now, the minority of people we arrest are Mexican nationals. They don't even make up the majority. We have over 175 nationals that have been arrested out of 195 countries. So almost the whole entire globe is coming into America. So this has nothing to do with race, ethnicity. This is about law and order. And we're seeing a demographic shift in America, not an ethnic or race-based demographic shift. We're seeing a demographic shift of citizens versus non-citizens. And that's how they're going to change and transform America. Because let me ask you, you have the vast majority, over half of all the illegal aliens coming into our country are illiterate in their own language, have like an 8th grade education, have no technical skills. They're just farmhands coming in by the millions. Do you think they understand that we're a republic? Do you think they understand that we even have something called a Constitution, a Bill of Rights, First Amendment, Second Amendment, and on and on and on? Of course not. And then who is going to be completely and utterly dependent on the federal government? The illegal aliens that came in.
Exactly what they
exactly
want.
What they want.
They want people who they will grant amnesty and citizens who will be dependent on the deep state, leftist, rhinos too, government, right? ChristiTutionalist, that's why I invented that term. Not left, right, not Democrat, Republican, not liberal, conservative even. Come together as Christians on those things we can agree on. I'm tired of the bull stuff of the immigration system is broken. We need comprehensive immigration.
No, we don't.
No, it's not broken. You refuse to uphold the existing laws that existed forever. But this show usually only goes about 30 minutes, so we're going to wrap that up. I want you to tell us about your book, of course, before we go.
Well, my book is titled Invaded, the intentional destruction of the American immigration system. And you can find it on my website, J.J.Carrell.com, or just go to Amazon and type in Invaded and it will pop up. And it talks in detail about what you and I are discussing right now. And I take stories about in my career to prove my point of how this has devolved into an invasion. And I believe it's high treason by our federal government. And one of the questions I ask in the book, and I'll ask you, and it's a rhetorical question, but I ask all the hosts that have me on as a guest, and I ask them, if what I am saying and what you are saying, and we agreement that this is intentional, if you don't believe that it's intentional, after all the data, everything that we all say, yes, this is actually happening, my question to the left is always, well, then tell me what your theory is. What do you believe they're doing this for? And then there's always this incredible awkward silence. And I don't break it. I just sit there and we just stew in about 15 to 17 seconds worth of very awkward silence. And I break it.
It's always followed by you're a racist. I'm not talking to you anymore, right?
Yep.
They cannot refute your facts. So
Yes.
Saul Alinsky, personal ad hominem attacks, racist, sexist, Islamophobic. I get that all the time because of terror strikes coming soon to a city near you. Tell that to Dawn Williams, the Black female Muslim woman of the research show, who's read my book, interviewed me, knows exactly what's going on, but that's what the left does. Racist, sexist, Islamophobic, homophobic, whatever, because they can't have an honest conversation. And again, that's J.J.Carrell. It looks like Carrell, 2 R's, 2 L's, but it's Carrell. And JJ, where can people contact you? Where can people reach out to touch base with you?
Well, you can go right to jjcarrell.com and hit the email, and it'll send it directly to me. And you can go on my Substack. I have a JJCarrell at substack.com, where I write about exactly what we're talking about at least 2 or 3 times a week. And there's an audio version. And I have a YouTube where I put out about 2 or 3 times a week, short videos about anywhere from 5 minutes to 11 minutes, just talking about this and disproving the lies. Everything you're hearing, I'm telling you, everything you're hearing in the media about the border is 100% lie. And what Mayorkas, who I believe is the head of the snake, is doing to America is intentional, strategic, and planned. And I will say this, sadly, he is winning. And I don't see America as we know it continuing on if Biden and Mayorkas continue on for another 4 years after his first term. I just don't.
Yeah, Al, this is Joseph M. Leonard of ChristiTutionalist Politics, author of ChristiTutionalist Politics, the book, as well as Terror Strikes Coming Soon to a City Near You. So I know what I'm talking about. It's not like I'm just some clueless host on this. JJ knows what he's talking about, which is why I needed to have him on the show. So thank you again, J.J.Carrell, for coming on. And we've got some other odds and ends to get into in this episode. So this segment will be coming to a close. Hello, wasn't that a great discussion? Notice I call it a discussion. I don't do interviews. I invite people into my home onto this show to have discussions. I don't tell them what to say. They don't tell me in advance what they're going to say. We don't do pre-interviews to have a feeling of what each other are going to say. It's a conversation, a discussion, a free flow of information, sometimes very serious, sometimes fun. But this is segment 2 of season 1, episode 18, titled Odds and Ends. Like I joked with JJ, I almost called him Steve, right? Steve Carrell. J.J.Carrell, not Carrell, even though it looks like Carrell, but yeah, and again, raw, uncut, flubs, all the blemishes, just how my mind goes, you're getting it. Not going to cut that out. Anyway, odds and ends. Yes, here are the odds and ends, things that probably should be whole shows. So I am going to really rely this time, as these shows are in conjunction with thelibertybeacon.com, a piece that drops usually by the same name of the ChristiTutionalist Politics show it corresponds with. The articles and the show are meant to complement each other, not be standalone either or on their own. Yeah, they are standalone on their own, but it is really important for you to go to thelibertybeacon.com, especially this episode, and see the full odds and ends article there, and people watching the reading the libertybeacon.com piece there. Hopefully come back over. I intend to embed a version, the JLenardDetroit YouTube Rumble behind the scenes sneak peek video version of the show into the article. Hopefully they will indeed take the time to watch or listen online. This podcast audio is hosted, is parked, as they say, housed, servered on Buzzsprout. So you can always catch the episodes as they drop Saturday mornings, every Saturday at Buzzsprout. Now I'm on 14 other platforms. Yes, Spotify, iHeart, Podchaser, Podbean. I can't even remember, let alone name them all. But you could find the show everywhere, 14 others, and growing as we speak. So find it anywhere, but it takes days sometimes for a show to matriculate to the other platforms. So catch Buzzsprout, ChristiTutionalist Politics, Saturday mornings it drops. So by noon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern time, a new show will be there every Saturday. But yeah, this time you really need to go to the Liberty Beacon corresponding article. I'm only going to touch on these issues here that are there because these really should be their own shows. I keep putting them off, so we want to get them in now. 17th Amendment. I have been on and on and on about it for decades. It's part of the bastardization of original intent. We are not a democracy. We are a constitutional, limited, representative republic. The 17th Amendment was one of the final nails in the coffin of the 10th Amendment and states' rights. The U.S. Senate is meant to be the body of the states, each state getting 2 senators, equal, each state equally represented in the U.S. Senate. The U.S. House of Representatives is the people's body. They're meant to be separate. They are checks and balances. Your senators were meant to be allocated by the states, generally the state legislatures. You elect your state representatives. They then select senators to represent the state's interests. And the 17th Amendment bastardized all of that. And for those of you watching on at JLenardDetroit, YouTube or Rumble, sneak peek behind the scene video, raw segment, you could see the backgrounds change to federal tyranny. Let me move. States and God being erased. I dodged to let you see the whole frame. You could see the U.S. flag, a artistic montage. I can't think of the term I'm looking for here, begins with an M, but an artistic rendering representation of a thought, federal tyranny, states and God being erased. The U.S. flag with no stars, indicating states' rights erased. And God Bless America, you can also see on video, the G is whitewashed out of God because God has been whitewashed from our society. So we need to repeal the 17th Amendment for those reasons alone that I just stated. Now, I used to write for Red State. There was a great piece on Red State. I forget who did it. It's gone now. It has some great commentating, comments, including from yours truly there. We went back and forth with a liberal leftist troll about his complete ignorance on the Constitution and our founding fathers and us as a republic. Why the 17th Amendment? On and on and on, reason after reason after reason, in addition to what I laid out, why it should go. But for the reason alone is it destroys the proper check and balance we were meant to have. That alone, the 17th, must be repealed. Now I'm going to pull a Marco Rubio. Grab a sip of my Soda Stream root beer again there. Apologies, a bit dry today. The next thing, God and guns. All right, there's going to be a whole piece, God and guns, at some point, and therefore a whole show, God and guns. So just briefly, though, I want to mention the Second Amendment. People, it's not there for hunting. I mean, come on, give us a break. For the defense of the state. Here in Michigan, Article 1, Section 6 of our state constitution, re-ratified in 1968. You know, all the summer of love and hippie time. Article 1, Section 6 remain. The right to keep and bear arms for the defense of oneself and the state and your property. Clear as a bell. Even more clear, even though the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, in my mind, is clear, as concise as it is. Without that right, you have no other rights, because you have no way to defend your other rights. And then lastly, we talk about history on this show. In my book, ChristiTutionalist Politics, the book version, I go into the Bradford Colony. You don't have to understand the failings of communism, fascism, socialism, and a quick aside, this isn't 1930s. The Nazi Socies, which later became known as the fascists, the Nazi Socies, as Joseph Goebbels coined them, they were socialists. The German socialists were fighting the Marxist, communist, Moscow-backed Russian commies at the time. All right, there's no difference in them today. Communism, fascism, socialism. It's all about their banner, their flag, their ruling elites, all the same means to the same end. Minor socialism, communism, the direct takeover and state ownership of a business. How is that any different than the socialist fascocrats, as I call them, fascists, just giving you the illusion of private corporate ownership? The boards still have to adhere to all the deep state fascocrats regulations, power and control over corporations, over your business. There's no difference there. You still have to live within their dictates. No real difference. But you don't have to look at Mao and Marx and Lenin and Stalin and Castro and Che, or even Chavez, Venezuela. You can look to the United States history. We tried communism on our very continent in the early years. The Mayflower Compact that people don't understand because history isn't properly taught. The Bradford Colony. The Mayflower Compact was a communist manifesto of its day. No private property, all a collective ownership. Everybody owns everything equally. Everybody shares in everything equally. Well, guess what? Atlas Shrugged. And that's where I think Ayn Rand got the idea for Atlas Shrugged. Literally, they were starving to death because more and more people wanted to do nothing and ride in the cart. And those pulling the cart finally said, why am I pulling the cart so hard when they're getting an equal share for having done nothing? Now, I go into the biblical reasons why that isn't proper in ChristiTutionalist Politics, the book. I'm not going to quote it here. Please buy a copy of ChristiTutionalist Politics, the book, and look for ChristiTutionalist Politics 2 that will be coming summer of 2024. So Bradford had to institute private property ownership, free markets, and guess what? As they say, the rest is history. The colony then went on to thrive, as did the United States, based on those free market, personal responsibility, individual responsibility, freedom principles, private property ownership principles. As Paul Harvey says, or used to say, rest in peace, brother, now you know the rest of the story. So that's it for the end of the Odds and Ends episode. Thank you for tuning in. Again, all these topics deserve their own show at length, but I couldn't hold back any longer in needing to at least touch on these things in this episode. Take care. God bless. Thank you for having tuned in for ChristiTutionalist Politics show. If you haven't already, please check out my primary internationally available book, Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you, available anywhere books are sold. If you have locally run bookstores still near you, they can order it for you, or autographed copies are available online direct from me via terrorstrikes.info/shop. And please tune in to Savage Unfiltered podcast, of which I am a co-host. And be sure to check out more about today's discussion at thelibertybeacon.com, where my articles drop every Saturday. And let me remind, over time, the fancy high production items will come. But for now, for starters, it's just you as a very appreciated listener by me. Indeed, just me on the podcast side end of things. All substance, no fluff, no fancy high production intro or inserts, at least yet, just straight to key discussion points. A show that looks at a variety of topics, mostly politics, through a Christian U.S. constitutionalist lens. So again, thank you from the bottom of my heart, as I know you have over 168.9 million plus podcasts out there you could choose from. Thank you again so much for tuning into mine. Take care. God bless.